Shocking rules the Nevada prison guards never break. You won't believe what happens at midnight. As the clock struck midnight in the Nevada State Prison, a weighty hush blanketed the cold, cement walls. It was a silence so thick, it could swallow sound whole. And deep in the heart of this grim fortress, shadows danced and secrets stirred. Prison guards moved like phantoms beneath the stark fluorescence, their eyes darting nervously. These weren't just any guards, they were the keepers of rules far darker than the night itself. Strange things happened once nightfall cloaked the prison. Cell doors that never creaked suddenly groaned, as if the spirits of the convicts within whispered secrets meant for no living ear. Some swore that every full moon, the whispers turned into wails. "That's just a rumor," newcomer guard Trent chuckled, but he could feel the prickling on his skin. He had heard the tales, the ones of inmates disappearing only to reappear hours later with wild eyes, and stories of unimaginable horrors lurking just beyond the walls. A sudden clang echoed, jolting the air, and those few guards still on the floor exchanged nervous glances. "What do you think that was?" Trent asked, throat tight, chest pounding. No one answered, but you could feel the fear curling tightly inside them. It was as if the prison itself held its breath, waiting for Derek, the veteran guard, to fill the air with a story, a tale to explain the unexplainable. It was then that the lights flickered, casting ominous shadows. They were reminders of a past best left buried. The old-timers whispered of the midnight watch, a rumor about a hidden assembly of inmates sanctioned to oversee the guards' actions during the witching hour. Each officer swore to uphold their post, but deep down, they knew, once the clock struck midnight, every rule was open to question and the darkness had its own set of laws. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Just as Trent turned to Derek for reassurance, a scream pierced the eerie tranquility, a raw sound that sent a shiver pouring down his spine. It was a shriek so primal, it stopped breathing and hearts alike. The guards clenched their fists, eyes wide, exchanging terrified glances. What had emerged from the shadows? Whispers of sinister forces began to swirl among them like tornado winds, pulling them deeper into the night. Was there truth to the legends? Every heartbeat seemed amplified as they formed a tight circle, the lights flickering dangerously, revealing grim faces steeped in doubt. Unspoken questions hung heavy in the air. What would happen if they didn't follow the rules? As another agonizing cry echoed through the block, one thing became painfully clear: midnight was just the beginning. What dark truth awaited them in the depths of the prison walls? The guards froze, their breaths shallow, the air thick with uncertainty. The scream faded, leaving behind an oppressive silence, punctuated only by the low hum of flickering lights overhead. Derek's eyes darted to the far end of the corridor, where shadows pooled like ink. "We need to see what that was," he muttered, barely above a whisper. Trent felt his heart race, throbbing against his ribs. "Are you sure?" Derek shot him an incredulous look. "You think I want to? Someone's in trouble, rookie. We can't just stand here." With a shaky nod, Trent followed Derek down the narrow hall. Each step echoed like a drum, amplifying the dread coiling in his gut. Their footsteps broke the stillness, carrying them closer to the unknown. As they approached the source of the scream, the corridor suddenly chilled, a draft brushing past them as if warning them away. Just as they turned a corner, another scream echoed, this time more desperate, more filled with anguish. It spiraled through the air, sharpening their senses. Trent's head spun, trying to make sense of it. "This can't be happening," he whispered. Derek halted, raising a hand to signal silence. They pressed their backs against the cold wall, eyes trained on the flickering light ahead, where shadows moved unnaturally. The guards exchanged glances. Was that a figure moving under the cracked fluorescent? As a faint outline emerged, the lights flickered again, plunging them into darkness for an agonizing second. Go! Derek urged, voice hoarse with urgency. They dashed forward, the tension snapping as they rounded the last corner. What awaited them was a nightmare. There, in one of the cells, they saw an inmate, lips curled in a snarl, eyes wild and unfocused, clawing at the bars as if trying to escape some unseen terror. His body trembled, drenched in sweat, beads glistening in the dim light. Please! Help me! He shouted, his voice cracking, fear radiating from him like a wave. You can't let them take me. They're coming. Derek instinctively reached for his radio, but the crackle was met with a void dead silence. What the hell? Panic began to flood his face. Trent's mind raced, questions spiraling wildly. Who's coming? What do you mean? Before the inmate could respond, a gust of wind whipped through the corridor, rattling the cell doors. The lights pulsed ominously, and for a fleeting moment, they thought they saw shapes, dark silhouettes just outside their line of sight, flitting between the shadows. The inmate's eyes widened, terror consuming him as he pounded against the bars. They're here. We need to move. Trent's heart pounded in sync with his frantic thoughts. He glanced at Derek, who had gone pale, fear clawing at his resolve. We can't leave him here. Derek shouted, almost pleading with Trent. But just then, a whisper echoed through the air, a chilling, hollow sound that seemed to rise from the walls themselves. Break the rules or the darkness will claim you. A shiver raced down Trent's spine, freezing him in place. To act was to gamble with the very fabric of their sanity. They were teetering on the edge of a precipice, and the plunge seemed inevitable. What do we do? Trent asked, panic rising in his throat. Derek swallowed hard, eyes darting around. We can't let ourselves be taken. But we have to save him, or it could be us next. As they stood on the brink of decision, another scream rang out from the darkness, cutting through the air like glass. It wasn't an inmate's voice this time. That it was a guard, and it was approaching fast. What awaited them next was unknown, a churning mix of dread and determination thick in the air. Would they break the rules, or face the darkness that threatened to swallow them whole? The guard's instincts kicked in as the cold dread settled like ice in their bones. Derek's grip tightened on his flashlight, its beam quivering as they faced the approaching discord. Heart pounding, he glanced at Trent. We can't stand here. We have to do something. Trent swallowed hard, steeling himself against the tide of panic threatening to swallow them. But what if we don't find the guard? What if his voice broke, and the weight of their stake settled heavily on his shoulders? Each heartbeat resonated in the claustrophobic corridor, echoing their shared fear. The scream grew louder, more frantic, drawing closer with every second. In that moment, they both understood, the only way out was forward, even if it meant facing the inevitable turmoil lurking in the shadows. Derek rushed to the open cell door, the inmate still pleading behind him. Don't leave me! He cried, desperation rising with every syllable. But Derek had made his choice, and now there was no turning back. Stay close, Derek hissed to Trent, stepping into the darkness beyond the cell. Shadows loomed, oppressive and thick, shifting as if breathing. Their footsteps faltered as they moved further down the corridor. Then, footsteps echoed behind them, staggered and disoriented. It's coming! The inmate's voice rang out, but it was drowned by another scream, a guard caught in a snare of terror. Trent stopped dead. We have to help him. No. Derek urged, fear creeping into his tone. We'll get trapped. We need to stick together. But Trent was already moving. The instinct to protect and serve surged through him, pushing him forward. You can't just leave him. He's one of us. Sprinting, Trent pushed forward despite Derek's frantic calls behind him. He rounded a corner and spotted the guard, a tall figure resting with an unseen force. The guard's eyes were wide, pupils dilated, thrashing against a spiraling dark mass that seemed to pulse and sway. Get off him! Trent shouted, adrenaline surging, fists clenching at his sides, ready to fight whatever haunted them. As he advanced, he stumbled into a darkness thicker than night itself, an unyielding barrier that pressed against him like a living thing. Just then, a whisper trickled into his ears, a chilling amalgamation of fear and malice. "Join us or become one with the dark." Trent froze, the words severing any resolve he had left. The guard's screams merged with the whispers, creating a cacophony that drove nails of ice into his heart. He struggled to move, grounded by an unseen weight. From behind, Derek's frantic voice pulled him back from the precipice. "Trent! We have to go. Now!" With a surge of strength, Trent ripped himself from the cold grasp of despair. He turned and ran back, colliding into Derek, who was wide-eyed, sweat beading on his forehead. "What happened?" Derek gasped, dragging Trent back, away from the chaos. "They're letting something out we have to stop." A voice boomed, breaking through the panic. It was another guard, fear mixed with authority as he brandished his weapon, pointing it toward the corridor. "You're endangering everyone." The energy shifted, tension remaining thick but now layered with confusion. Derek's eyes darted around as if searching for an escape. "Yes, right. If we don't control this, we'll lose more than just ourselves." With danger enveloping them, and whispers of darkness sliding ever closer, the looming threat became palpable. A crack formed in the silence as another scream erupted from deep within the shadows, a shrill note of dying hope echoing throughout the halls. What had they unleashed? Outside their control, figures seemed to materialize from the walls, shapes writhing in the dim light. Would they find a way to fight against what haunted them, or had they already crossed a line from which there was no return? And what awaited them when the clock struck midnight? Derek's heart raced as the shadows stretched toward them, coiling around the corridor like serpents ready to strike. "We need to get back. Now!" he shouted, pulling Trent closer. "But the guard I know." Derek barked, panic rising like bile in his throat. "But we can't help him if we're dead." The other guard lowered his weapon slightly, eyes darting between Derek and the dark corridor. "We need to regroup. There has to be a way to get that thing back." Trent's breath quickened, the screams echoing around him, the anguish palpable. "What if it gets stronger?" he shouted, desperation creeping into his voice. "What if it's already too late?" The tension was suffocating. The other guard nodded as if coming to a decision. "We've trained for this. We can't let it corner us." We fall back, regroup by the control room. "Get the lights up, we need to shed some light on whatever is happening." Before they could respond, a piercing scream erupted, a shriek filled with terror that made their bones rattle. It came from deeper within the shadows, echoing off the walls, blending with the whispers that pulsed through the air like a living entity. "I can't just leave him there," Trent said, trembling, the fear gripping him like a vice. "We have to try something." Static filled the air, and with it, the weight of the shadows seemed to pull Trent back. The corridor around them warped, threatening to collapse in on itself, as dark shapes danced just out of reach. "Trent, listen." Derek pulled him closer, desperation and assurance battling in his eyes. "If we go back in there, we might not make it out again. We need to trust that the guard can survive for a little longer. If we don't regroup and get this together, we're done for." Trent closed his eyes, torn and unable to shake the image of the guard being consumed by the dark. He felt a gut-wrenching doubt. Maybe it's not just the guard. "Maybe it wants us all," he murmured, eyes flicking toward the shadows as they seemed to breathe and pulse. "Then we need to fight it," the other guard cut in, voice low. There was a steely resolve in his gaze. "We have to show it that we're not weak. We're not prey." Every instinct screamed at Trent to stay, to scream for help, but he knew they had to get out. "Okay," he finally relented, lips dry, fists clenched. "Let us go." They turned as one, racing down the corridor, the oppressive darkness stirring and shifting behind them like a predator stalking its prey. As they moved deeper into the prison, the air thickened, charged with something terrifyingly alive. The screams faded, replaced by an unsettling silence that drummed against their ears, then a loud crash echoed behind them, like breaking glass a fracture in the dark. Derek spun around, instincts flaring. What was that? I don't know. Trent replied, his pulse quickening anew. But we don't have time. The silence was far too heavy, it felt like a lead weight pressing down on their chests. Gritting his teeth, Derek shot a glance at the other guard. We need to stay focused. Move. As they went, the walls felt alive, pulsing like a heartbeat, throbbing to a rhythm that resonated with the screams from earlier. With every footstep, the oppressive air clawed at their minds, muting their thoughts and drowning them in dread. Suddenly, a shape shifted in the darkness ahead. They froze, adrenaline surging. What is that? The other guard whispered, wide-eyed. Then, a chilling figure stepped into the dim light. It was dressed in the tattered clothing of a guard, face obscured by shadows, but those eyes they glimmered with an unnatural light, glancing back toward the shadows they had just escaped. You shouldn't have come back, it whispered, voice slithering through the air like smoke. Trent's heart stopped. What happened to you? The figure grinned, a twisted smile that sent shivers down their spines. I'm free now, but at what cost? Was this what they were becoming? Would they become one with the dark, or could they resist whatever grip that prison had, now and forever, and what other truths lay hidden within those shadows? A palpable dread settled over the trio as the words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. The figure's grin widened, exposing teeth that looked too sharp, too predatory. As the shadows twisted and writhed behind it, a sickening chill crept up Trent's spine. Get back! Derek hissed, raising his weapon, but the ghostly figure didn't flinch. Instead, it took a step closer, merging with the shadows like it belonged to them. Why are you here? The figure asked, its voice an unsettling mix of a friendly tone and a threatening growl. You think you can fight it? You think you can escape? Trent shook his head, disbelief rooting him to the spot. You're one of us, we can help you. He blurted, feeling foolish even as the words left his mouth. Help? The figure let out a hollow laugh. You don't understand. There's no helping in the dark. It consumes you, makes you something else. Derek took a hesitant step back, scanning the corridor for any means of escape. You're wrong. He shouted. We still have time to save the guard. Time. The figure's eyes gleamed brighter, dancing with a manic energy. You think time exists here? In this place? Time is a lie, just like your hope. Suddenly, the dim light around them flickered ominously, shadows drawing closer, pushing along the walls as if they were alive, ready to swallow them whole. The dark whispers grew louder, a cacophony of agonized yeriks echoing off the stone. Trent's heart raced. We need to go now. With urgency fueling his every movement, he turned to run, but the shadows thickened, barreling toward them, hungry and determined. Derek grabbed Trent's arm. Stay together. We fight with light. He fumbled in his pocket for a flashlight, the cold metal a lifeline in the chaos. Let me. Trent cried, wrenching himself free, firing the flashlight's beam across the room. The shadows recoiled, churning like smoke against the bright light. Good, the figure hissed, though a flicker of panic crossed its features. But it won't hold. It never truly holds. The other guard stepped back, eyes wide. What are we dealing with? How do we fight it? By facing your fears. Suddenly, a low growl reverberated through the air, pushing against them. The shadows surged forward again, but this time, they directed the light, slashing through it with focused determination. For a moment, they pushed the darkness back, revealing jagged edges of crumbling walls and lingering, twisted forms just out of reach. The unnatural glint of the figure's eyes darted like snakes in the dark. Now. We run. Derek yelled, eyes blazing with urgency. With the figure momentarily thwarted, they broke into a sprint, navigating the oppressive terrain toward the control room. Static crackled in the air, a sinister soundtrack that made every step feel heavier. They could still hear the whispers, creeping into their ears, planting seeds of doubt. As they reached a corner, a blinding flash sparked in the distance, illuminating a path filled with broken security panels and discarded gear. No! They're cutting us off. Trent gasped, but even as they turned the corner, something shifted behind them. The dark figure slipped back into the shadows, laughing, echoing, mingling with the taunting whispers. You will regret this. Tension roiled in Trent's stomach as they reached the control room. We have to seal it off. He pleaded, desperately searching for controls. The walls trembled as if responding to the malevolence lurking outside. Could they really contain whatever was hunting them? Were they even safe? Derek! Hit the lights. The urgency in Trent's voice sliced through the air, but would it be enough? The shadows stirred, growing restless, as the door behind them creaked ominously, and a scream echoed through the halls no longer distant, but far too close. Would they find the strength to fight the darkness, or would they become part of the nightmare they desperately tried to escape? The doors slammed behind them, a solid thud that rattled the control room as the shadows outside surged against it. Trent felt the vibrations through his bones, the reality of their situation hitting him like a cold slap. Derek panted beside him, eyes wild with fear, as the whispers outside grew even louder, clawing at their sanity. Where are the lights? Derek shouted, tearing through a tangle of wires and panels that had long since given up their purpose. The dim glow of the remaining bulbs painted frantic shadows on the walls, their flickering illumination barely keeping the encroaching dark at bay. Over here. Trent gestured wildly to a rusty switchboard, every second pulling them closer to some unknown doom. Sweat dripped down his brow, merging with the adrenaline zipping through his veins. Just as Derek reached out to flick the switch, a jarring crash echoed from the door. The shadows pressed harder, an unsettling symphony of cracks and groans filling the air. The laugh of the dark figure rang out again, a mocking serenade that slithered into their minds. You cannot hide from me. You bring the light. I bring the darkness. Shut up. Trent yelled, the desperation fueling his rage. You're not real. None of this is real. But even as the words left his lips, an icy seed of doubt took root in his heart. Maybe they were the illusions, trapped in a nightmare of their own making. Focus. Derek's voice cut through Trent's spiraling thoughts as he finally flipped the switch. The room exploded with light. Floodlights flickered to life, washing over their body, banishing the shadows into the corners, at least for the moment. But the figure outside didn't retreat. Instead, it began to form through the thin veil of light, its features contorting and writhing like smoke coiling in the air. Foolish guards, it hissed, your light is weak. It can't save you, only prolong what is coming. Trent gripped his flashlight tightly, the metal chill anchoring him to reality. What do you want? He shouted into the blinding brightness, trying to mask the fear choking him. What I want. The figure's face twisted into a grin wider than Trent thought possible, sharp teeth glinting like daggers. I want what lies in each of you, your fears, your regrets. It is all I need. Just then, the air grew heavy, filling with a suffocating sense of dread. Trent's voice faltered. He could hear his sister's laughter echoing in his head, bright, alive, followed by the deafening silence after her voice faded away, a painful memory clawing at his gut. Don't listen. Derek shouted, his flashlight shaking in his hands, illuminating the figure's twisted face just enough to catch its glimmering eyes. It's trying to pit us against each other. Trent forced himself to breathe. Then we fight back. Together. The thought rooted his fear. He turned to Derek, determination sparking between them. We push it back. Derek shouted, rallying. We fight back with our own light. The lights flickered again. Somewhere, they registered that they were losing power. With panic rising, Trent raised his flashlight high, feeling the warmth begin to deteriorate. We can't let it in. The figure clawed toward them, wheezing almost, as if it fed off their fear. You think you can keep me out? I am inside you. No. They both yelled, inching closer to the window that looked down into the depths of the prison. They had to stay united against the consuming dark. With one final burst of energy, they cast their lights forward, illuminating everything. The shadows screeched, recoiling as the air began to sizzle and spark, but the echoes of the past surged, and Trent felt another scream in the distance, more human this time, filled with actual pain. They're still down there. He cried, realization crashing into him. We have to save them. Could they do it? Would they face the darkness again for a chance to save the others? The thought burned in his mind, and, in that moment, something changed outside the flickering lights. The figure was waiting, grinning wider than ever, as darkness no longer faded but thickened around them. Come find them if you dare. Trent, heart bursting with courage, turned to Derek. We can't leave anyone behind. Not now. Not ever. But just as they prepared to move, the ground beneath them shuddered violently, and the electricity surged dangerously low. Did they have what it took to confront the dark horrors still lurking within the prison? Would they find the strength to enter the shadows and rescue those engulfed by the night? As the door rattled violently, the screams echoed again, clear this time, dragging them deeper into the nightmare they thought to escape. Derek's breath caught in his throat as the shadowy figure pressed closer, its form shifting and pulsating in the dimming light. With each flicker of the bulbs, the darkness fought to creep in, slithering over their feet like a predator closing in on its prey. Trent, we need to move now. He urged, desperation spilling into his voice. Fear flooded his body, making it nearly impossible to think straight. If we don't find those people soon, we might lose our chance. But Trent stood frozen, his gaze fixed on the window overlooking the abyss of the prison. The screams rose again, haunting and filled with agony, a chorus of the lost. Just beyond that window lay the answers, but what kind of horror awaited them in the darkness below? Together, remember. Trent's voice trembled but held an urgent energy. He gripped his flashlight tighter, already feeling its power waning. We can't turn back now. With that shared resolve, they bolted for the door, but the shadows lashed out, snagging at their ankles, trying to drag them back. Trent could feel their cold, clammy grip, a sensation he couldn't shake off. Help! The distant cry broke through the chaos, fracturing their focus. The desperation in that voice stiffened Trent's spine. He couldn't let fear dictate their path. Keep your light focused. He yelled, pushing through the door. With a surge of adrenaline, they dashed down the corridor, each footstep echoing ominously, drowning out the whispers threatening to seep into their minds. The hallway stretched and twisted like a labyrinth of despair. Walls dripped darkness, each corner steeped in shadows that curled toward them, whispering terrible promises. Bad decisions, past mistakes snapped back to focus, each one a weight on their shoulders. It was as if the very structure of the prison sought to expose their vulnerabilities, to twist them into another layer of misery. Can you hear that? Derek breathed, halting suddenly. The air felt electric, charged with something sinister. Yet Trent's heart raced. Beneath the cacophony of their breaths, he could hear it too, an unsettling harmony of despairing cries drifting from deeper within the prison, getting louder with each step they took. Derek glanced back, eyes wide. What if we can't turn back if we go further? Trent shook his head. We have to trust each other. Our fear is their blood. And we're not here to be hunted. Taking a deep breath, he pushed on, the hallway closing in as they slipped between walls, the flickering lights painting chaotic shadows against the concrete. But something shifted, a wrongness magnified in the air. Suddenly, an ear-splitting crash reverberated down the passage, sending waves of their own terror rushing through their veins. The power flickered again as they raced toward the source of the cries. A doorway splintered open at the end of the corridor, a portal to what they dreaded yet yearned to reach. Almost there, Derek gasped, every step weighted down by uncertainty, but just as they neared, the door slammed shut with a booming thud, an eerie silence following it. The screams turned into ghastly howls, echoing through the walls with a guttural intensity. No! Trent shouted, rushing forward, flinging himself against the door. Something deep inside him screamed to break free, to save the lives they could still reach. "Let us in." "No. No. It's too late." A nearby voice pleaded, one filled with a desperation that sent chills through his bones. "You can't help us. You shouldn't have come." Trent's gut twisted. It was a risk, an impossible choice, but one they had to make. Outside the blaring protests of the shadows, a new voice called from within, someone familiar, someone, and if they failed now, what would their fight have been for? Behind them, the darkness thickened, and the figure appeared again, slithering through the cracks of the door like a snake. "You think you can save them?" it hissed, gleeful malice draping its voice. "You are the shadows now." With a desperate shout, Trent rammed his shoulder against the door, pushing with all his might as Derek joined him, their combined forces slamming against the wood, every muscle burning with determination. The door shuddered, a sickening creak filling the air. "Together!" they cried, the power of their resolve channeling through them as they pushed against the resistance, but as the door began to crack open, a flash tore through the hallway, a blinding light revealing what lay beyond. Just as the darkness attempted to consume them all, would they be brave enough to make that leap and face the truth waiting for them on the other side? Or would they lose each other to the shadows forever? The door splintered slightly, just enough for a thin line of light to spill through, illuminating the frantic faces of Derek and Trent. Each grimace mirrored the depth of their fear. They surged forward, driven not just by the hope of rescue, but by a desperate need to confront whatever lay beyond. "Now! Push harder!" Trent cried, gritting his teeth with effort. The shadows writhed, tendrils seeking to ensnare them, but they were too focused on the blinding light cutting through the darkness. Suddenly, the door burst open, an explosion of sound that echoed down the hall, followed by a stench like burnt metal and decay. The light surged around them, momentarily blinding, but also pulling them in a magnetic force of hope against the oppressive dread. The sight that greeted them was nothing short of a nightmare. Bodies lay strewn across an ashen floor, ghostly shapes contorted in anguish, trapped in moments of pure terror. The air was thick, charged with an unseen force that made Trent's skin prickle. He felt something shift, as if the very fabric of reality around him had come alive, struggling to keep its secrets buried. "Do you see them?" Derek whispered, his voice trembling. "Are they?" "No." Trent interrupted, grasping Derek's arm. "We're here to save them. We're not leaving empty-handed." But as they stepped into the room, the shadows inside churned violently, forming the distorted shapes of the trapped souls. Eyes reflecting despair, they reached out with skeletal hands, pleading for salvation, pulling at their sanity. The very walls groaned with their cries, deafening, chaotic. "Find their source!" Trent yelled, eyes scanning the chaos. "They're connected to something. We need to break the cycle." Just beyond them, a flicker of movement caught Trent's eye. A figure, shadowed but strangely familiar, hunched against the far wall, shaking. It felt like a beacon, their chance. "Help, please," it uttered, barely audible over the tumult. Without thinking, Trent sprinted towards it. But with each step, the shadows thickened, clawing at his legs, as if trying to drag him back into the darkness. They felt heavy, like misty chains fettering his every movement. The despair of the room swelled, sinking into his heart, pulling him under waves of fear. "Stay together!" Derek shouted, his voice barely slicing through the clamor. He struggled through the swirling shadows, a solid anchor in the tempest. Trent's heart raced as he reached the hunched figure, revealing a face twisted in fear and resignation. He nearly gasped. It was someone from their past, someone lost in the chaos. "Samantha," he breathed, swallowing hard. "We're here to take you home." She looked up, tears streaming down her face. "You shouldn't have come. You're too late. It consumes you. It's already begun." "What do you mean?" Derek interjected, a sense of urgency flaring in his voice, but before she could respond, a low rumble began beneath their feet, the floor trembling. The shadows writhed with renewed fury, their laughter a cacophony that sent chills down Trent's spine. "You thought you could change fate? They taunted in unison. You wear your chains willingly. No. Not like this. Trent shouted, grabbing Samantha's hand, pulling her closer. Suddenly, the room erupted in a blinding flash, the brightness a stark contrast against the encroaching shadows. The spirits wailed louder, a piercing symphony of confusion and anger. The walls trembled, warping as a crack began to form, the darkness within screaming as if it had come alive, a ravenous beast resisting its own inevitable demise, fighting back his instinct to flee. Trent glanced back at Derek, whose eyes mirrored his own, a tumult of fear but a steely resolve. We must fight it, together. He cried, sensing this was the moment where their choices would define everything. That as they braced against the onslaught of darkness, it all unraveled, the echoes of their past decisions swirling within them, threatening to consume any hope they had. The very air thickened with an invisible barrier, making it harder to breathe, each second stretching like an eternity. Hold tight. Derek shouted, pushing against the encroaching shadows, determination blazing in his eyes, but just as they found their footing, something shifted in the crack, a blinding pulse of light pushing outward, blurring the line between reality and nightmare. The choice had to be made: would they embrace the light while the darkness clawed at their souls? Or would they surrender to the very shadows they sought to escape? Time was running out. The moment the blinding pulse vibrated through the room, everything seemed to hang in the balance. Trent's grip tightened around Samantha's hand, the weight of desperation grounding him as flickers of light raced through the shadows. He could feel the tremors pulsing from the crack, as if the very foundation of the space was coming undone. Trent. We need to get out now. Derek yelled, his voice barely cutting through the tumultuous noise of wailing spirits and echoing laughter. He was pushing against the shadows, trying to create a path for escape, but Trent didn't move. No. We can't leave without them. He glanced around, his heart pounding wildly in his chest. Faces flickered in and out of the darkness, each one exuding a deep sorrow that dug claws into his heart. Help us, came a chorus of whispers, each tone laced with hopelessness. The spirits molded into the semblance of those they once were, desperation etching their features as they swirled toward the pulsing light. Trent. Derek shouted again, tugging at his arm. Now or never. But Trent couldn't abandon them. Not now. We need to break the cycle, Derek. We can't leave them like this. The decision felt monumental, heavy with implications. Could they really alter the fate of these lost souls? Samantha's voice, low and fragile, broke through his thoughts. You're risking everything. It'll consume you. You don't understand what this place is. It knows your fears, your guilt. Her warning sent a shiver down his spine, but it also ignited a flame of resolve. He couldn't let their past haunt them any longer. Then we destroy it. He shouted, his voice faltering but filled with conviction. Without waiting for his friend's response, Trent stepped closer to the crack, the light within it growing brighter. He could feel it pulsing, resonating with something deep inside him. The shadows recoiled from its brilliance, howling in defiance, their forms shifting like dark water. Together, we can do this. He urged, turning to face Derek and Samantha. Just hold on. As the three of them linked hands, the shadows lunged, snapping and twisting like a wild beast. Each tendril felt like cold, damp fingers, gripping tighter, but they forged ahead, anchored by unity and a shared purpose. In that moment, time didn't exist. Only the space between breaths and the raw intensity of will. The pulsating light surged stronger, illuminating the space, and they moved as one, pushing against the shadows with all their might. Now, focus on the light. Trent screamed over the cacophony. He could feel the energy of their desperation wrapping around them, pulling at the walls of despair. Then, as if answering their desperate call, the light erupted. It was a visceral, brilliant explosion that cast the shadows far back, burning through the illusions of horror. The spirits cried out, a mix of anguish and relief, their forms flickering like stars fighting against the evening sky, but the shadows weren't willing to relinquish their hold so easily. A fierce roar erupted from the depths, echoing like thunder, as if something ancient and vindictive was awakening. You cannot escape. The darkness hissed, its voice 1,000 times louder, shaking them to their cores. In an instant, Trent realized they were at a precipice. Would surrendering to the light save them all, or would it throw them into deeper darkness? The choices they made in these next moments would seal their fates. Push harder. Derek shouted, his eyes wild with fear but shining with resolute determination. An electric surge shot through Trent, intertwining his grief, hope, and pure, unyielding spirit. As the brightness cascaded over them, he felt the fragile line of reality blur once again, teetering on the edge of something monumental. The shadows twisted into a vortex, tightening around them. What they couldn't see was that a new force was awakening within the pulsing light, something they had failed to recognize. The truth lay nestled deep, as hidden as the very darkness that haunted them. All they had to do was grasp it before the abyss swallowed them whole. But would the light reveal salvation, or would it expose the darkest parts of their past? Time was running out, and the wall of shadows was closing in around them. With desperation coursing through their veins, Trent, Derek, and Samantha grasped each other's hands tighter, sweat beading on their foreheads as the shadows shrieked, twisting and writhing like a tempest. The pulsating light dragged them forward, blinding yet invigorating, promising hope amidst the chaos. We can't falter now. Trent yelled, the adrenaline surging through him, igniting a fire in his core. Let it burn through you. Embrace it. Derek shouted, his voice breaking through the cacophony surrounding them. The light felt alive, responding to their fears, their regret. It craved their resolve. They could feed it with their determination, and even in that dark abyss, they found a flicker of strength. Together. Samantha urged, a steely resolve in her voice as she squeezed their hands. They surged forward, pushing against the sea of darkness clawing at their legs. The shadows hissed, lashings of cold air biting through their resolve, but still, they pressed on. Suddenly, the shadows convulsed, an angry roar erupting from the depths, shaking the walls and causing the ground to tremble beneath their feet. You think your hope will save you? You will become part of me. The voice, chaotic, maddening, echoed through the darkness. It was taunting, scouting their weaknesses. Trent fought to keep his feet steady. No. He yelled, channeling everything he had into that single word. You will not take us. For a heartbeat, an image of his sister flashed before his eyes, reminding him of the light he had fought so hard to keep alive. It broke through the haze, her laughter intertwined with another scream, pulling him closer to the brink. For those we've lost. He shouted, feeling the pulse of light swell with each word. The shadows began to spiral and ebb back, screeching as they recoiled from the brightness like a creature repelled by fire. Another surge of light erupted from their joined hands, illuminating the dark space around them with a fierce determination. The shadows shrieked in pain, their forms distorting grotesquely. Feel their pain. Samantha shouted, eyes shining with tears of conviction. We've all suffered. They are with us. And in that moment, the ghosts of those lost souls joined their energy, their pain transforming into strength behind them. It was less about fierce combat and more about collective unity, a bond that transcended fear. The air thickened, charged not just with electricity but empathy. The darkness writhed, its grip faltering as the walls began to groan. You think you can defeat me with these foolish lights? It howled, but even the most sinister voice quaked as unity fueled their determination. Together. Derek bellowed once more, and they leaned into the brilliant light, allowing it to guide their path. The shadows convulsed, retreating as the trio pushed deeper, fighting for every flicker of brightness. Trent's heart raced, pounding loudly, almost drowning out the anguished cries around them. They could feel each spirit, their hopes and dreams swirling with the light, connecting through the joy of liberation. We won, TB fodder for the dark. He cried, finally believing every word as the pulsating energy cascaded around them, lifting them above despair. With one last push, they surged straight into the heart of the shadows, that last flicker of light erupting in an explosion that fractured the blackness, blinding all three of them with brilliance. The walls shook, and daybreak seeped through cracks in the darkness, illuminating a path beyond the abyss. As the shadows collapsed like a house of cards, the chilling chill of loss melted away, replaced by something warm. They felt the air shift, the cries of the lost souls easing into a hum of gratitude. Trent's vision sharpened, and the room shimmered, revealing an expanse of light beyond the horizon, resonating with freedom. "We made it," he whispered, choking on his emotions. "Not yet," Derek replied, still holding on tightly while examining their surroundings. Abruptly, the air shimmered around them, and the lost souls began to coalesce. Trent blinked, seeing familiar faces, some he'd lost, some he'd thought long gone. The echoes of laughter broke through the somber veil, filling the empty spaces in his heart. Something deep inside him shifted. "Thank you," he murmured, voice breaking, yet shining with gratitude. The spirits smiled, an ethereal brightness illuminating their features, their eyes reflecting hope, acceptance, and the promise of freedom. As the last remnants of darkness faded, a peaceful stillness enveloped the prison. They had faced the shadows together, armed with light and unity, the bonds of connection anchoring them in turbulent waters. Samantha sighed, stepping back, her expression softening. "We can finally go home." Trent nodded, realizing the significance of that sentiment. It wasn't just about leaving the prison behind, it was about embracing everything that had shaped them, every mistake, every bond. They were leaving behind not only the prison walls but the shackles of their past fears and regrets. "Let us go," Derek said, his voice steady, a reassuring anchor amidst the distant echoes of their fight. As they walked toward the flickering light that led them away from the darkness, Trent felt the weight lift. They would carry their scars, but they now wore them like badges of honor. They stepped into the dawn, leaving behind the prison that had symbolized their fears. Together, they had conquered not only an entity of darkness but had found their strength within themselves and each other, and now, as the light embraced them, Trent looked back one last time, whispering thanks to the shadows that had forced them to confront their past and forged their bond into something unbreakable, something that would guide them long after they left this place behind. If you've made it this far, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the chilling secrets and exclusive stories that lie ahead. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and let us know you're with us on this journey. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this conclusion. Your thoughts mean everything. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this epic conclusion. Your support helps us bring more thrilling adventures like this to life. We can't do it without you.